My name is Philip Scher, as Lawrence has mentioned. We're currently working with a CalCAPA providing managed services. But a brief history about myself. I come from a long background of working with both CAAs as well as other grassroots nonprofits in the Mississippi area. So I'm in the depth of nonprofit world and understand a pretty good deal about the issues and the concerns that come up with nonprofits, everything coming up with budgeting, timelines, really most importantly, privacy and information that's related to the clients that we're serving. And so what I wanted to do today is make this kind of an informal conversation, but also show some basics in regard to cybersecurity. And just to verify, can everyone see my screen okay? Great. So without further ado, please feel free to interrupt me anytime that you feel that you have a question or anything pertaining to cybersecurity or anything else related to cybersecurity. Feel free to interrupt at any time. So what I wanted to first start off with is really want to make a really bold statement, is that at some point, your organization, so your CAP, will more than likely face a cybersecurity attack. And really the impact of how that cybersecurity issue affects your organization is really based upon your preparation. So what I really wanted to kind of cover today are certain things that you can do as an organization to make sure that you remain cyber secure. So we understand, or I understand, that you both work with county-based IT service providers, or you may have your own hired out service provider. But nevertheless, there are some other things that you might be able to bring to your IT team to properly prepare you for cybersecurity threats. And so before we get into this, I know we could maybe have this discussion about an NGO versus what a CAP agency is, but I really wanted to kind of bring to the table that nonprofits do have a reasonable amount of cybersecurity risks that are presented on a yearly basis. So based upon this reference that I'm showing right now, over 50% of NGOs reported being targeted in 2021. And this includes, the compromise of personal data, records, things of that nature. And it has cost up to $1.35 million for the Broward Health of California, nonprofit organization. So again, just to be clear, understand that we're not necessarily in the NGO space necessarily, but we do have some roots there as well. So nonprofits are typically unprepared. So as I've been working with nonprofits for a very long time, we're all about client delivery, client services that we're trying to deliver to our clients. And so we are a little bit less focused on cybersecurity typically, and really want to focus on how to serve our clients to the best of our ability. So what that usually leaves us in the lower end is that we typically don't have the funds or the budgets available to properly protect ourselves. So again, here's some statistics based upon some recent research. As we can see, 75% of our nonprofit organizations do not monitor the networks. Again, I would hope that any managed service provider or any county-based IT service provider is monitoring your network. So it's really important that we're doing that. And then really importantly as well, we usually don't have cybersecurity plans, meaning that we don't have any documentations, policies, or procedures that are specific to organizing ourselves around cybersecurity. And one of the most important things that we could do as a nonprofit or as a CAA is to train our staff regularly. So this would be recurring cybersecurity awareness seminars, not necessarily like this, but more specific to how to handle phishing attempts, what to look for in suspicious emails, how to keep your client data more secure. So as we know, depending on who's in this conversation, if we're dealing with caseworkers that are dealing with client files specific to making sure that we have maybe the social security number card, or if we're, double checking income or double checking, other aspects of our intake process, we really want to even keep those documents a lot more, not even cyber secure, physically secure. So we don't want to leave these things on caseworkers or case managers' desks. But from a cybersecurity perspective, we also want to get and educate ourselves a little bit more in the area of cybersecurity. So here's some other impacts of what nonprofit operations have dealt with in regard to cyber attacks, some of which I've kind of covered with identity theft. So again, as we're even serving our clients on a day-to-day basis, even though you would not see them as a traditional target, and of course, as we're trying to move our clients to self-sufficiency using the Roma mindset, the last thing we want to introduce is an identity theft scenarios in which we're making our clients vulnerable. Of course, there's also reputation or harm or loss regarding, maybe something being posted on a website specific to your CAP organization or to the services that you provide. It's also important that, of course, that we're, any of the grants that we're receiving, that they're properly being managed, and all the cybersecurity measures are in place to prohibit those funds from being exposed. And as I mentioned before, you might have politically motivated messages or malicious information that might impact the way that we support our clients. The main thing that we also want to look at is holding the organization to the scrutiny of vulnerabilities, meaning that it's really important that we take some form of responsibility in regard to the way we protect client data. And then, of course, there might cause a disruption in our ability to actually, provide services. Specifically, let's say we have a situation in which we have an ESIP recipient and they're not going to be able to get their emergency funds because, some kind of cybersecurity incident has happened and they're going to get their power shut off, or, not have heating, things of that nature. So it's really important as an organization, as we're serving our clients, to not only look at it necessarily from data perspective, but also from a physical perspective. So the basic framework that we usually use in today's world is called the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. It's basically a basic framework. It's an optional framework that most IT companies use to help prepare their clients so that they can keep data as well as machines and users safe. So it's a combination of about 5 different aspects. Number 1 is identifying, protecting, detecting, and responding, and then recovering. So what that basically means is that through a combination of 5 of these vectors that we're protecting ourselves and have all the specifics needed to keep ourselves safe. Again, a little bit more about NIST. NIST is a cybersecurity framework. It is, again, just an optional process on how to manage and reduce infrastructural risk. The cybersecurity framework is made up of standards and guidelines, practices used to prevent, detect, and respond to cyber attacks. And there's the National Institute of Standards and Technology that developed this framework, primarily for private sector organizations, but it also affects, of course, organizations like ours that were, receiving grant monies, et cetera. So the way the NIST framework breaks down a little bit in more detail is, again, viewing it through the lens of these 5 different areas. When we're identifying, we really want to identify all our assets, meaning anything pertaining to the IT infrastructure or the business environment. Of course, not a business environment in your case, but an organizational environment. Doing a risk, looking at things through a risk assessment lens, and also looking at it from a management strategy. Going on down the line, we of course need to protect any of our data assets via access control. Access control would be usernames, passwords, things of that nature. Also, policies and procedures regarding access control. So who has access to which data? And it's really important, of course, that we have policies and procedures in place, not only written policies and procedures, but also technology that helps inform the policies and procedures, including awareness training, doing data security, again, who has access to what data, making sure that it's encrypted, etc., and doing ongoing maintenance and doing other protective technologies such as antivirus protection, anti-malware, things of that nature. So we also want to be able to detect anomalies, so be able to detect viruses, detect suspicious activity, and then also continuously monitoring our infrastructure, making sure not that all the computers are also safe, but making sure that all the networking, everything from Wi-Fi to network connectivity, etc. And then, of course, there's a detection process that's involved with that. And there's multiple detection tools that are out there. Hopefully, some are already employed within your organization itself. And then, of course, we want to be able to respond quickly to anything that we're able to detect. So that would, again, include some form of standard operating procedures so that we can plan how to respond in case of cybersecurity attack, have clear lines of communication. So who do you contact in case you have an issue? Being able to analyze everything from the reason why the cybersecurity attack may be occurred, and then doing a mitigation. So taking light of or focusing on the particular cybersecurity attack that occurred and then mitigating it. And then based upon what we've learned, make further enhancements down the road. The most important, the most critical aspect of any of the framework is being able to recover quickly, meaning that, again, we don't want to have any kind of downtime prohibiting us from serving our clients more effectively. And again, looking at it through the lens of what can I have learned from this experience, and then implementing new policies and procedures, but also safety enhancements, etc. And then being able to communicate either with your IT service provider, with other decision makers, with department heads, case management supervisors, etc. So what we want to do is look at the defensive strategy that one would typically take. This is kind of the defense strategy 101. So it's a matter of layering security properly. First thing is to combine technology with good security management practices. These are basically developing standard operating procedures from which one can manage security. You want to be able to reduce the risk or the vulnerability. You also want to represent controls necessary for the ultimate protection. You want to use multi-layered security. So it's not only about passwords, it's about, hardware, software, network layer protection, which we'll kind of dive into a little bit later. And of course, if one area is weak, so if your user names or passwords are weak, you want to have other subsequent mechanisms to compensate for a weak layer that's in your defense. We'll take a little look at those as well a little bit later. So the main thing that I really want to focus on is that a single layer security is not effective. Again, I use the username and password. It could also be antivirus. You want to have multiple areas that you can basically be able to defend in case there's an issue. So in many cases, there may be one door that may be closed, but another is open, meaning that, again, we just have a single layer of cybersecurity versus a multi-layer. And again, if you just have one layer in place, they will find other layers that they can attack more quickly and efficiently. All the layers that you put, again, you want to set yourself up from a cybersecurity perspective as if you're kind of doing it through a sieve, in which you're affecting multiple aspects of the cybersecurity. And then just as a point of reference, as we saw in Star Wars, the Death Star, there was a single point of failure for the entirety destruction of the Death Star, which led to the protagonist coming away with a victory. Jurassic Park, Also had its thin layers of security, in which there was one gate, no backup power, and one IT guy. So traditionally speaking, really trying to illustrate that one cybersecurity mechanism that you might have in place is usually not sufficient. You really want to kind of come in it from a multi-layered approach, making sure that every attack vector is pretty much covered. So our friend Kevin McAllister, as we saw in the famous movie, he got the layered security right. You know, he took it, he didn't only protect himself from an easy point of access, the front door, he protected himself in multi-layered ways, not just anticipating that one attack vector by the people that are trying to come into the house and trying to do harm to the kid, you know, would just come through one layer. It's really important, of course, that he put these multiple layers, and of course, in the end, it kept the bad guys of ultimately getting to them. So when we're talking about cybersecurity, we usually talk about it from 7 different layers. There's a human layer, a network layer, an endpoint layer, application layer, data and physical, and of course, it's all there to protect your mission critical assets. So the 7 layers of cybersecurity, again, are the human-based things. So this would include things such as training and testing, meaning that you have your staff, caseworkers, executive directors, HR staff, everyone within the organization taking regular cybersecurity awareness classes. As we're all familiar, all it takes is one user that doesn't have the appropriate training to let one bug into the organization. So really the most important attack vector that's always taken a little bit more likely than it should is just the human factor. It's usually humans that are making the ultimate decisions to let the bad guys in. The other things that we really want to do from a cybersecurity perspective is look at it more from a physical layer. So we want to implement locks, if need be, biometric access controls, cameras, fire suppression. This would be dealing a lot more with, let's say, we're dealing with client files, making sure that they're safely stowed away, not leaving things exposed on a desk as we're, you know, doing various intakes throughout the day. Any of the areas that have any client-specific data, specific to paperwork, things of that nature, should always be in a safe, secure environment through a locked file cabinet, through a very limited access based room or structure within the organization, and making sure you have the cameras present to detect anything that's kind of go odd or strange that may be going on. So it's, again, the physical things that we can do as a CAP organization to keep our files and clients safe. And then more from an abstract layer, so from the actual technology perspective, we also want to implement physical security in regard to network traffic. So this would be the implementation of a firewall, for instance, or implementing VPN. So basically creating virtual private networks for remote users that may need to have access to files that you might be storing in the cloud or otherwise. It's also really important that at each of your organizations that you're using IPS or IDS. So basically there's technology that's integrated in most firewalls these days that can only detect an intrusion from taking place or someone attempting to exploit your network, but also prevent the intrusion from happening. Also, another really important component, of course, is having antivirus and anti-malware. These days, you know, there's a lot more security that we would typically recommend installing on endpoints or your users' computers. But this is kind of the most basic form of endpoint security that you'd want to have at a minimal at your organization. It's also really important that we're doing software patching, vulnerability scanning, pen testing, and security, and detecting our security capabilities recurringly. So again, what software patching is basically making sure that everything from your Mac computers to your PCs are getting all the software patches, meaning all the latest updates are installed, all the various OS X updates are installed, or Windows updates are installed, but also doing vulnerability scans. So basically using specialized software to determine if there's anything vulnerable going on in the network, so that if there is something or a vulnerability is detected, that it will allow you to address those issues with your IT team. The really important thing that should be done on every single network as we're supporting our clients is doing something called penetration testing. So penetration testing takes it a bit further than what typical vulnerability scans do. So vulnerability scans are usually done by a piece of software, whereas pen testing is literally you're using an ethical hacker to determine if there's any kind of weaknesses. So this would be trying to hack your Wi-Fi or trying to hack your network, or trying to detect if there's users that are doing unsafe things on the network and then exploiting those opportunities to hack, such so that if you have an intelligent human being that's doing these things, they can come up with security measures to help inform, again, your IT team on how to further secure yourselves. And again, what's really important to keep safe is our data. So it's important that we're able to identify everyone within the Capitol organization who has access to data. So that means having an audit trail of when that user accessed which data at one point. These are all automated procedures. This doesn't require any kind of human interaction. But again, it's important to log everything that's happening on your network, so you're always on the lookout for anything that's kind of going on that shouldn't be going on. And then really importantly too, is that we want to implement multi-factor authentication. So I haven't been in California long, but any kind of client management system that you're using, any type of ERP that you're using that's especially cloud-based, all forms of data entry should have multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is what we typically would use at a banking branch or anywhere else that is using something else other than a name, an address, or some other personal identifiable information, such as an email address or a password. It's a third party or third layer protection that double checks and makes sure that you are actually an authentic user via a pop-up that will pop up on your phone, and you have to enter a PIN or enter some kind of long access code. It's really important that as we're serving our clients out in the field, that we're using MFA to the fullest extent for every area where we're entering client data specifically, or anywhere where we're housing or managing funds. The most important thing, of course, is protecting all our mission critical assets. So again, this would be where the data is being stored. Everything from doing multiple backups. So as if we're using cloud-based client management systems, we would hope that they're backing up all of their data recurrently. I would highly recommend that we get this in writing, but also ask if they're doing regular audits to make sure that they are testing that they can restore data from backup. So it's one thing to be backing up data, but it's also really important that we're testing the data in separated scenarios in which we're not waiting for data to be inaccessible and then trying to do a restoration. We want to make sure that every snapshot of backups that we're doing regularly are actually being audited and making sure that they're working properly. So it's, again, really important implementing these 7 layers of cybersecurity as we're protecting our agencies as well as our client data. Some basic things that we can do from a protection standpoint, and if we look at this vertical here, if we focus on the upper right-hand corner where we see 1, 4, 19, and 2, these are the basic things that we can do as an organization with typically the least amount of financial impact. But typically there is also a counter impact, which is the level of impact from a cybersecurity perspective may not be as high, but here's some basic things that we want to do looking at this this area. So number one, of course, we want to have a strong password policy, strong Wi-Fi security, making sure that we have a really good data backup. I would say data backup is the most crucial thing I have ever come across, especially working with nonprofits for 25 years, where we can see that the adherence to backups, making sure they're being monitored, making sure they're being audited, making sure they're being reported on. This is where most agencies end up failing, so that if there is a huge cybersecurity issue that happens along the way, they're not able to recover from backup because they just haven't been checking on it and making sure that's working properly. You also want to have screen lock settings. So this is really important for our caseworkers and case managers, so that if a caseworker or case manager steps away from their desk, you want a block screen come on. So if they have a client record or client file, or maybe they may have scanned images relating to determining if a prospective client is eligible to receive our services or not, it's really important that we're covering all these data points up, so that if we're stepping away the desk, no one can kind of peek over, especially if there's a client there. And the classic scenario would be, they have a buddy that might be sitting next to them. They took them out for a ride today, and they peek over the case manager's desk and can see someone's social security number, for instance. These are just hypothetical situations, of course, but again, what we want to do is protect our client data really strongly. And as we're moving out further to the left of the screen, the financial investment starts to increase, but the level of impact starts to increase as well. So what I can do after this presentation today, of course, is give you the slide presentation to mull over a little bit more. I won't go through the entirety of all the things that can be done here, but these are really just kind of what we consider the common sense security best business practices, and determining what level of financial investment that we're going to make in respect to the level of impact that it will have on our infrastructure. So I really wanted to kind of keep this as simple and as easygoing as possible. I'm just kind of opening up the room for any questions. If anyone has any questions, concerns, or if you wanted me to spend any more detail or time on any of the things I've just presented, let me know. Well, that completes what I wanted to cover today. Again, if you have any questions, concerns, I'm here to answer those now. Lawrence, are you here?
Yeah, Phil, I'm here. So if anybody has additional questions, I'm sure if they have them after the training, Phil, would you mind answering questions?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
You can always reach back out to me. I'll provide you with my contact information. And of course, Lawrence has our contact information as well. I didn't want to spend a lot of time, kind of preaching, and really wanted to kind of open up the floor for any kind of questions or concerns or anything that I could do from a advisory position. So if you have any questions about anything, I'm here. I've been doing IT for 25 years. If you have anything really specific technically you'd like to ask, I can maybe answer those questions. I'm not sure. But yeah, let me know if there's anything we can do to help.
Hey, Phil, will this PowerPoint be made available as well?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll include that with the recording and send that out to folks. And this may be some really great information to share with boards in terms of risk management and so forth too.
I agree. I mean, the biggest thing, and again, I've been working with nonprofits for such a long time. And historically, I've always known that our community action agencies, because I've worked with several of them, we're so focusing on serving our clients. The cybersecurity aspect of how we serve our clients is usually a little bit more further back on the back burner, and especially in regard to IT. So we're more about, working with people more so than actually working with IT. IT is an unfortunate consequence that kind of comes between us serving our clients. But generally speaking, I've just seen throughout the years that nonprofits tend to be a little bit more vulnerable. And the other misconception I wanted to kind of briefly touch on is that usually nonprofits think that they're not a target, and that's not the way hackers work. They're not looking for, multi-billion-dollar industries. They're just looking for any attack vector they deem vulnerable. I've had personal experiences in which I've worked with IT people that worked in the nonprofit sector, and they've had their organizations hacked, and they come to us for advice or how to better protect themselves. So just because you feel that you may not be, a big honeypot that hackers are looking to exploit, that's not the way the world of hacking works. It's all about basically on the hacker side, they're just looking for any vulnerability they can possibly find. And so that's the main thing I really want to kind of share with everyone here today, is that nonprofits are very susceptible to hacking. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, like Lawrence had mentioned, I will send this stack of slides and make it available to everyone, leaving my contact information if everybody has any questions or concerns. And I think that sums it up for today. Hope you were able to learn something, and let me know if I can be of further assistance.
Great, Phil. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for all the very valuable information. Hope that folks are able to glean some of this from the recording as well. And thank you also for your offer to answer questions. I think that's really valuable to our network.
Great. Well, thank you and have a great day. Bye.